Good day everyone. Today lessons we discuss the curriculum response of higher education for teacher education amid the pandemic and beyond. Learning objectives. Identify the implication of the occurrence of COVID-19 pandemic to teacher education curriculum. Propose adjustments to the curriculum during a pandemic. Identify ways and means to address the curriculum vis-a-vis the situation during pagkakaroon nga ng COVID scenario. Hindi tayo magiging kagaya ng dati hanggat wala tayong nahahanap or walang available na vaccine. Social distancing is kailangan pa rin mo observe even when quarantines are lifted. Pagkakaroon ng gathering of large crowds would still be discouraged, hindi pa rin pinapayagan. Traditional classroom face-to-face delivery will pose a risk for contamination. In other words, the new normal will soon pervade in the areas of business, commerce, industry, and as well as education. Thus, ang university at ang educational institution ay nagkaroon ng paghahanda para sa new normal para ma-deliver yung teaching and learning due to pandemic. One emerging concern during the pandemic is the provision o yung pagkakaroon ng flexible learning modality to mitigate the risks of face-to-face interaction. Kapalit ng face-to-face interaction, ang flexible teaching and learning modality is provision for flexible curriculum. In the Philippines, the standard written curricula are anchored on the program standards and guidelines of the different disciplines as recommended by the Commission on Higher Education or CHED. Curriculum modification. Ang curriculum modification, ito yung process of making adjustments sa pagkakaroon ng bagong programs in higher education. Specifically, teacher education is kinakailangan nilang mag-respond sa pangailangan ng learners due to pandemic. Focusing on the essentials mapping, the needed and enduring outcomes in the recommended and written. Ang challenge ngayong pandemic is kung paano tayo makakagawa ng curriculum na balance between the relevant basic competencies for the students to acquire and the teacher desires to achieve the entire outcomes of the curriculum. Para masolve natin yung challenge na to, ang teacher ay kailangang i-revisit ang existing curriculum and analisahin ang outcomes of the program or course. It should be done to determine the needed and the enduring outcomes and which outcome should be emphasized, kung alin lang outcomes ang kailangang i-emphasize. Ang needed na outcomes are the desired knowledge, skills, values that are required to learn higher concept. It is defined as a competencies that learners need to continuation to subsequent level of concept. Ito yung kinakailangan para mag-continue ang isang students. They are considered as prerequisite competencies. Sa kabilang banda, enduring outcomes are competencies that are necessary not just for succeeding lamang in a certain topic but are useful beyond a single unit or study. They are knowledge, skills, and values that have overarching applicability in real life situation. It is applicable. In curriculum modification, enduring outcomes can be given emphasis. So, teacher can decide which competency would be retained or merged. Examples of outcomes taken from the sample syllabus in art appreciation, a course in the general education curriculum in higher education. Box A, existing statement of outcomes in syllabus. At the end of the 3-unit course, the student should be able to, first, mount an art exhibit, concept development, post-production, marketing, documentation, critiquing. Second, create their own works of art and create their own production of exhibit. Box B, modified statement of outcome to cover the essential. At the end of the 3-unit course, the students should be able to, first, create their own work of art through virtual production or exhibit. In this way, there's only one outcome instead of two. Table 2, Box A, current unit outcome for purpose of education. Determine culturally appropriate terms, expression, and images, sensitivity to gender, race, class, etc. Needed outcome. Second, determine cultural and intercultural awareness and sensitivity in communication of ideas needed outcome. Box B, modify the statement of outcome as essential. First, use culturally and interculturally appropriate terms, expression, and images in communication of ideas.
Good day everyone! I am Shari P. Valencia from BS Ed Filipino 2201. And for today, I will discuss the two curriculum modification made by teacher education in order to respond to the needs of the learners amid and post-pandemic. So, it is the second one, the rearranging of the college course offerings. Another way of modifying the curriculum during the pandemic is to rearrange the course offerings. For example, the theories and concepts courses that can be delivered online may be offered in the first 2 years while face-to-face delivery is not yet possible due to risk of intention. The laboratory-based field study and practicum courses can be offered later when face-to-face modality is already feasible. So, in this time of pandemic, we can only take the courses which can be done at home because it is really hard to take the risk, and of course we can avoid the virus or the COVID-19. So the school adjusted the curriculum for us to be able to also adapt and still learn even if we are at home. And of course, we will continue we will take the other courses if the face-to-face modality is already feasible. The third one is offering of elective or cognate courses that relate to the pandemic. In the global health crisis, it is imperative that the curriculum be adjusted by offering courses that are needed to survive and thrive amidst the challenges of the pandemic. Some of the proposed elective courses that are deemed essential, especially in the teacher education programs, are the following. So, in this time of crisis, the curriculum adjusted by offering different courses that is time and relevant to what is happening in our country and all over the world. So these are the elective courses that are deemed essential, especially in the teacher education programs. So the first one is change management. The second one is disaster risk management. The third one is flexible learning and teaching strategies. And the next one is resilient education, alternative assessment, remote teaching, health and mental wellness, instructional materials development for blended instruction, active learning principles and practices, psychosocial support during crisis. So change management. It is defined as the methods and manners in which a company describes and implements change within both its internal and external processes. This includes preparing and supporting employees, establishing the necessary steps for change, and monitoring pre and post change activities to ensure successful implementation. The disaster risk management. It is also a course offered which talks about the application of disaster risk reduction policies and strategies to prevent new disaster risk, reduce existing disaster risk, and manage residual risk, contributing to the strengthening of resilience and reduction of disaster losses. It is also important that we have this kind of course offered in teacher education program because we cannot really assure if we are still safe at home, and we have to study about disaster risk management so that we can be prepared and we can be ready to whatever will happen in the near future. The next one is flexible learning and teaching strategies. It refers to students and teachers' activities which supplements and enhances classroom teaching and actively involves students in taking responsibility for planning and completing work in ways adapted to their individual needs, with appropriate support being provided. So since it's pandemic, the teacher and the student must take this course because they will become flexible. They have to be flexible. They have to be versatile. They have to do everything they can just to be able to comply to their school requirements because it is pandemic. We cannot go to physical setting in in classroom. And the next one is resilient education. Academic resilience means students achieving good educational outcomes despite adversity. For schools, promoting it involves strategic planning and detailed practice involving the whole school community to help vulnerable young people to do better than their circumstances might have predicted. So, So in this course, the students should also be resilient and know be resilient to do what they have done in school should also be done at home. They should also apply what they have learned in school at home. Even if there is a pandemic, still we can learn. The next one is alternative assessment, also referred to as performance test or authentic assessment. It is used to determine what students can and cannot do, and contrast to what they do or do not know. In other words, an alternative assessment measures applied proficiency more than it measures knowledge. Typical examples of alternative assessments include portfolios, project work, and other activities requiring some type of rubric. So this is um, the different kind of assessment that can be done at home because it is pandemic and it is alternative. So the assessment that we cannot do the assessment that we can be done at school which we cannot done at home should have an alternative one for us to be able to still continue learning. The next one is remote teaching. It occurs outside of a physical classroom. Instructors are separated from their learners in time and distance. This type of teaching may be synchronous, where students watch instructor deliver their lectures live, or asynchronous, where students watch lecture recordings at a later point in time. So we are familiar to this. It is an online class or e-learning. We can still learn through the use of the technology we had today. So we are so thankful and blessed to the emergence of technology. And the next one is health and mental wellness, defined as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So we still have to study about the health and mental wellness because we all know that a lot of people are suffering different problems, different mental illness and health problems, financial problems. So we still have to study about this so that we can be aware and we can be aware to what may happen so that we can avoid to those things. The next one is instructional materials development for blended instruction. Some of the common tools used to enhance a blended course are videos online at service such as YouTube and different platforms, bookmarking tools and online resource lists, social groups, course lecture and tutorial or flip learning and podcast. So we are already familiar with the instructional materials development for blended instruction because and the next one is active learning principles and practices. Because we all know that it is really hard in online class if there is no active learning principle and practices. So it is also we have also needed to study about the active learning principles and practices so that we can still have the spirit or the collaboration and the communication inside the classroom, even if it is online. Because because of the pandemic, we cannot really see each other in person. So we still need to be in touch, even if it is online through Messenger or Zoom or Google Meet or any other social media platforms. And the last one is psychosocial support during crisis. We need to study this course because it is also an important course that helps individuals and communities to heal the wounds, psychological wounds, and rebuild social structures after an emergency or any crisis. So that would be the end of my report. Just keep tuned and keep on learning. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. So I am here to discuss about the modifying the taught curriculum and modifying the assessed curriculum. So let's start with modifying the taught curriculum. Another way of modifying the curriculum and ensuring learning continuity during the pandemic is the implementation of multiple learning delivery modalities. So kinakailangan na magkaroon ng ibang kakayahan o karanasan to implement multiple learning for the student. Kinakailangan ng ibang paraan upang maipagpatuloy ang pag-aaral o paghatid ng kaalaman sa kabila ng pandemya. Now that we encounter the amid of pandemic, we use the social media as a platform of teaching and learning. Considering that face-to-face modality is not feasible, teachers may consider flexible distant learning options like correspondence teaching, module-based learning, project-based, and television broadcast. So dahil nga hindi face-to-face at ngayon ay online or virtual ang ginagamit, hindi ito hadlang upang hindi matuto ang mag-aaral. Bagkos ay mas pinag-iigting pa ng mga kaguruan na mahasa at paigtingin ang performance or activity ng bawat estudyante. May tinatawag tayong asynchronous at synchronous online learning para sa college. Gumagamit tayo doon ng mga Google Classroom, Google Meet, Messenger, YouTube, just to have a communication with each other and to pass all our activities. So for learners with internet connectivity, computer-assisted instruction, synchronous online learning, asynchronous online learning, and collaborative e-learning may be considered. Tulad natin na kaya naman at matutugunan ng online learning, ito na ang ginagamit natin as a connection sa isa't isa para mas mapadali ang pagbibigay ng impormasyon. Pwede rin na makonsider ang collaborative learning, which is one of the educational approach of using groups to enhance learning through working together by internet. So tulad ng ginagawa natin na gumagamit tayo ng Messenger upang magkaroon ng komunikasyon sa isa't isa sa tuwing may groupings tayo. So next is modifying the assessed curriculum. Adjustment on the assessment measure can also be considered amid the pandemic. There is a need to limit requirements and focus on the major essential projects that measure the enduring learning outcomes like case scenarios, problem-based activities, and capstone projects. So, hindi maiiwasan na magkaroon ng aberya through online, kaya nararapat lamang na magkaroon din ng limitas sa gawain at mas mag-focus sa major subject or mga mahalagang proyekto na susukat sa magandang kalalabasan ng pag-aaral ng mga mag-aaral. And to make sure that those activity that will be given will make a better outcomes of the learners. So the student will be able to do by their own to develop and improve their strategies. So kailangan din natin na limitahan yung mga gawain ng mag-aaral kung alin lamang yung mas kinakailangan at angkop sa mga subjects nila. Hindi yung may mga ipagawa lang tayo, kundi yun talaga yung masahasa at huhubog sa kurso na tinalaki sa nakinuha nila. Authentic assessments have to be intensified to ensure that competencies are required by the learners. So bilang isang taga-turo o guro, kinakailangan na maging maigting o maayos ang kaalaman upang matiyak na ang kakayahan ng mga mag-aaral ay patuloy na nakukuha o nahuhubog. Let us make sure that their skills can apply to the new situation or environment. It is to ensure that the student needs are being met. In the process of modifying the curriculum amid the pandemic, it must be remembered that initiatives and evaluation tasks must be unclear what the learners need, including their safety and well-being. So, kinakailangan bilang guro, tandaan natin na ang mga hakbang at gawain na gagamitin sa isang pagsusuri. Ang gawain o task ng mag-aaral na nakabase sa kanilang mga kailangan bilang mag-aaral. At sa kabila ng gawain na ito ay dapat na nakasaalang-alang pa din ang kaligtasan at ang kagalingan ng bawat isa. Mga task na hindi makakapagpahamak at hanggang maaari ay hindi makakapagpalabas sa bawat mag-aaral just to make sure that all of them or us are safe from the pandemic. So sa kabila nga ng mga gawain, mas kinakailangan pa rin natin na isaalang-alang o unahin natin isipin ang kaligtasan ng ating mga mag-aaral sa mga gawain na ating ipapagawa.
Good day everyone. I'm here to discuss the curriculum considerations, and under the curriculum considerations are the context of teaching and learning and the learners and the teachers. So since the World Health Organization has declared a pandemic time in March 2020, everything has changed including people's ways of life, and education as a human right has to continue despite this pandemic. Sa gayon, ang paghahatid ng curriculum na naangkop sa mga kontekstong ito ay dapat bigyan ng mas seryosong pag-iisip ng mga educators and teachers. Next is the context. So, dahil nga sa likas na katangian ng virus, ang World Health Organization ay naglabas ng mga alituntunin para sundin ang lahat at nang maiwasan ang kontaminasyon at ang pagkalat nito. At ito nga ay ang pagpananatili sa bahay or stay at home, keep distance o panatilihin ang distansya, wash hands o paghuhugas ng kamay at wear face mask o ang pagsusuot ng mga face mask. So, sa mga pangunahing alituntunin na ibinigay, ang face-to-face class nga ay almost impossible. At ang kasulukuyang edukasyon o ang new normal ay nagaganap na nga. Sa makatuwid, ang lahat ay nagbabago. Hindi tiyak at masalimuot ang mga kaganapan, kung kaya't upang magpatuloy ang edukasyon, kailangan bigyan ng mga guro ang kontekstong ito ng mahusay na pagsasalang-alang. So next is the learners and the teachers. So like all learners, college students are diverse in reference to the readiness to learn under the pandemic. At dahil nga sa pagkakaiba-iba ng pinagmulan ng mga guro at mag-aaral, masasabing mahirap para sa kanila ang lumipat ng face-to-face at to online class. Sa gayon, ang pagpili ng paghahatid ng kaalaman ay dapat naaangkop sa kondisyon.
Good morning everyone. For the continuation of our discussion, here are the appropriate teaching delivery during the time of pandemic and beyond. So what kind of teaching delivery may be appropriate for the learners and teachers context? This is a difficult question to answer because there are several factors to consider aside from the learners and teachers. Below are examples of delivery modes which may be utilized for flexible learning relative to students and teachers, with the availability of internet connectivity as a major factor to implement flexible teaching and learning. What kind of teaching delivery can be used if the students and teachers have? First, we have no internet connectivity. If the teachers and learners have no internet connectivity, here are some ways. First, we have use of printed self-learning modules or learning packets which are distributed through means that will follow social distancing, can be picked up from the strategic contribution centers. Hindi naman lahat ng estudyante ay may access sa internet, kaya isang mabisang paraan ang paggamit ng printed self-learning modules or learning packet upang maipagpatuloy nila ang kanilang pag-aaral kahit nasa kanilang bahay sila. Ang isa sa masasabi kong magandang halimbawa nito ay ang mga magulang ang siyang kumukuha ng mga printed self-learning modules or learning packets sa mga distribution centers kagaya sa school at sa barangay upang maiwasan din ang paglabas ng mga estudyante. The second one is, in places with no risk of COVID-19, a group of not more than 10 students may meet face-to-face but health protocols should be followed. Doon daw sa mga lugar na may low or no risk of COVID-19, ang mga estudyante ay maaaring mag-meet ng face-to-face upang magkaroon ng collaboration, ngunit kailangan sundin ang mga health protocols kagaya ng social distancing, pagsusuot ng mask at face shield, at palagi ang paghuhugas ng kamay at marami pang iba. Ngunit paano naman daw kung ang teachers at students have limited internet connectivity? Narito ang ilan sa mga paraan. First, we have asynchronous learning, a teaching delivery where students are doing their work independently based on what has been instructed online by the teacher, or they can access online learning at different times. This will allow flexibility in the learner's schedule. They can learn on their own pace. Under asynchronous learning, students are provided with learning materials or packets which may either be printed, recorded tutorials. Also, open educational resources will be provided. Based on my experience, karamihan sa aking mga guro ay nagpo-provide ng mga pre-recorded tutorials at o mga videos upang mas matutunan namin yung mga topic na kanyang dinidiscuss. At isa pa, nagpo-provide din sila ng mga educational resources wherein mas makakakuha kami ng sapat na kaalaman upang matutunan yung topic na aming dinidiscuss. But what if both students and teachers have excellent internet connectivity? Here are some ways. Maaari silang mag-conduct ng synchronous learning, real-time teaching and learning using online platforms like Zoom, Facebook Messenger, Google Meet or Google Classroom. This is also called remote learning. Teacher prepares an instructional guide like a lesson plan where most of the delivery will be lecture or demonstration. It is similar to whole class instruction. Sabi nga dyan, ang synchronous learning ay para lang din tayo face-to-face ngunit through online. There is a very little interaction at the end of the session through a question and answer. Synchronous learning can also be followed by asynchronous learning. Siyempre, pagkatapos ng synchronous learning, maaaring mag-conduct ang mga teacher ng asynchronous learning wherein maaari silang magbigay ng module or activity na gagawin ng mga estudyante sa kanilang bahay. In summary, teacher education curriculum responds to the pandemic in many ways. Some strategies used to modify curriculum to address the crisis for education of pre-service teachers to continue its implementation are focusing on the essentials, rearranging of the college course offerings, offering of elective or cognate courses, modifying the taught curriculum, and modifying assessed curriculum. Further, in the process of modification curriculum, consideration should include context of teaching and learning, the learners and the teachers, and appropriate teaching delivery. That's all and thank you.